Okay, we're on Samach Testament Beis. We were in the middle of a Cheshbon Gemara yesterday, and we're going to start again from the beginning of it. The Gemara had said that if a kid has a ara, bia of some sort, even a little minimal bia with his mother, he passes her from the kuna, according to Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel says she's still kosher. And the Gemara says that Ruchi Brei Rab Bar Nachmani said in the name of Chisda that the machlekes is not by anyone who's under 8. Anyone who's under 8, that's not considered a bia, if the boy is under 8. And the machlekes is not if the boy is over 9 years and a day, because everyone's masking, that is considered a bia. Machlekes is for the 1 year when the kid is 8, where the shaila is that Beis Hillel holds it's kosher because it's true that we find in the Torah and Tanakh that a kid as young as 8 could have a baby, but that's only way back when, and these days that doesn't work anymore. And Beis Shammai says, no, it's still, we do learn from Daras Rishonim, and if back then a kid was able to have a baby when he was only 8, now also, and therefore the bia is a good bia as far as passing his mother to kuna. That's the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The Gemara says, but everyone's masking that in Daras Rishonim they did know that an 8-year-old could have a kid. So the Gemara says on the last thin line on the page, the last word on the line. In fact, the Gemara of the Daras Rishonim and Null and Dailed, how do we know that in the Daras Rishonim they did have the last thin line on Samach Testament Beis, the last word on the line? Yeah, in fact, the Gemara of the Daras Rishonim, the earlier Daras for Null and Dailed, how do we know that an 8-year-old was able to have a baby? And the Gemara is going to go through a whole cheshbon here. So let me just spell it out for a second outside. Basically, the Gemara is saying that we can trace a couple of generations, and we can trace how long it was from the beginning of that time till the end of that time. And let's say we know that that time was less than a certain amount, we know that it must have been that they had babies at an equal division of that amount. What does that mean? Let's say you know that Ruvain had a baby when he was 20, and his baby had a baby when 10 years later. That means that a 10-year-old could have a baby because it's only possible for that younger kid to be 10, right? So you see a 10-year-old could have a baby. Let's say it was only 8 years later, then we know that an 8-year-old could have a baby. Very pashat. But this is not so pashat because we don't know the math for one generation. We only know the math for a couple of generations, and that means there's a longer span of time, and we have to divide the time into chalakim and say, couldn't have been less than this. So that's what the Gemara is going over here. So the Gemara says, how do you know that Daras Rishonim had babies at 8? If you're going to say midiksiv from the following. And the Gemara is going to go through a series of psukim. It's going to take us through about 35 or so years of history, and tie it all together and say must be that they had a baby within this town. So let's just go through the family tree over here.
I don't know.
Okay, the Gemara and Rashi tell us. Let's just go through the family tree. There was a lady named Bathsheba.
That was not Mansour says.
Yeah.
What's he complaining? There was Yeshiva Manal. He says, why don't we learn the prophets over here in the school? Prophets. He tells them it's enough prophet school.
Very good, very good. You know, my great grandfather, who I'm named after, his name he used to learn in a Haimish Chassidish yeshiva. In those days, only maskilim learned Tanakh. It was a crisis. It was a problem. You looked like you were reformed. So he used to learn it, but he would hide himself because he wanted to learn Nach. He would learn Nach, but he would hide himself. Anyway, okay. So what do we have to understand over here? The Gemara says that the family tree is like this. There's a lady named Bathsheba. Okay, she was David HaMelech's wife. Her father's name was Ilam. His father's name was Achitophel. So the famous Achitophel we had a few times in Shas so far, that famous Achitophel, we had it in Sanhedrin also already, we had him. His granddaughter married David HaMelech.
Right.
Yeah, Bathsheba had a son with David HaMelech. What was his name? Shlomo HaMelech.
Right.
So Achitophel was Shlomo HaMelech's great-grandfather.
Right.
Okay, so the Gemara is going to try to trace the age from when Achitophel had his first kid till Bathsheba had her kid, Shlomo HaMelech, and see how many years passed between. Okay? So the Gemara says the following. Let's read the following psukim. If you're going to say it's from the pasuk, Aloizais bas Sheva bas Eliam. I said it wrong. I said Eliam. It's Eliam. Aloizais bas Sheva bas Eliam. This is bas Sheva, the daughter of Eliam. Ashes Uriah the Hachiti. So that's when they married Bathsheba off. She was originally the wife of Uriah, but they married her off to David. She ended up marrying to David. That was the whole Ma'aseh with Bathsheba. And a different pasuk says, Eliam ben Achitofel Hagilaini. Eliam ben Achitofel Hagilaini. So you see that Eliam was the son of Achitofel. Okay? So now we know Bathsheba was the granddaughter of Achitofel. Vayishlach bi'adnasan anava v'yikra shema Yedidya bavor Hashem. When Shlomo Melech was born, Bathsheba sent a message to Nasan Anavi and called Shlomo Melech Yedidya because he was before Hashem. Yedidya is literally the friend of Hashem. Right. So that's when Shlomo Melech was born. Now, right after that, where it says that Shlomo was born, it says. The pasuk says, "Vahilish nasayim yam." It was 2 years later. Vayu geizim la'Avshalom. There were people who shared to Avshalom. Over there, that's when Avshalom killed Amnon and ran away to a place called Gishar.
And Avshalom
was the son of David, but that's not the point. The point is that at this point, and when Avshalom ran away, it was 2 years after Shlomo Melech was born. So now at this point, Shlomo Melech is 2 years old. Uchsiv, the pasuk says, Avshalom barach, Avshalom ran away. Vayelech Geshur, he went to Geshur. Vayi sham shalasham, and he stayed there for 5 years. So now it's 5 years since Shlomo Melech was born. Shlomo Melech is a 5-year-old. Okay?
More than that. It's 7.
No, it was 2 years. It was 2 years in Vayilish Hasayim Yamim was 2 years after that happened, and then Avshalom ran away.
Right.
And then Avshalom ran away. That pasuk of Avshalom Baruch is a continuation. It's not repeating. He didn't run away twice. When he ran away, he went to Geshura, and he stayed in Geshura for 3 years. That's 5 years total.
Oh.
Okay, so now Shlomo Melech is 5 years old. And it says, Vayeshev Avshalom b'Yerushalayim shnasayim yamim ufnei Melech l'ra. Avshalom, he came back from Gishar. He came back and lived in Yerushalayim for 2 years, but he didn't see David HaMelech. Okay, so now Avshalom now Shlomo Melech is 7 years old. Okay. And it says, it was 40 years after Klal Yisrael said to Shmuel Hanavi, we want to have a king. Okay, it was 40 years from them. And Avshalom went to said to the king, I'm going to go and do the Darim, the Karbanis that I promised to Hashem in Hebron. And the Vayomer, the Gemara elsewhere in Tamura says that's when he rebelled. So that was his rebellion. So now his rebellion was when Shlomo Melech was 7 years old. Okay? Uchsevin, the pasuk says after that point, Achitofel saw that he was his Eitzah wasn't going to be done. Basically, he saw that the Merida was going to fail, and that David HaMelech would come and be kill him as a Merit Malchus. And we already had earlier in the Masechta that somebody who's killed by the Melech is going to be Harugei Malchus. Their Nechasim go to the crown. They go to the king. And Achitofel didn't want his Nechasim to go to the king. He wanted his Yershim to have them. So what did he do?
If this grandson was the other Melch, so what's the problem?
When he married a Malchus, it doesn't matter. Look, remember Avshalom himself was David HaMelech's son, and he was married to Malchus, right? And he got killed, right? Can't be married to Malchus. So he saw that his Eitzah wasn't done. He saddled his donkey. He got up. He went to his house, to his city. He gave his final tzavah, his last will and testament, and he strangled himself. So he killed himself over there. Okay?
First suicide, yeah.
Wasn't the first suicide, I'm sure, but of course it wasn't. The Shalom Melech also fell on a sword. That's right before that even. Uksiv, the pasuk says, people of blood and treachery they won't have half their lives. What's the lifespan? Lifespan is 70. So people are Hashem will live won't live till 35. They won't live past 35 because that is Chatzi Yamav. Yeah. Vitanya, we learned in the Brisa, Kol Shnoisav Shel Dayig, all the years of Dayig in El Shloshim V'Arba. He had 34 years left. The Shel Achatefel in El Shloshim V'Shalosh. Achatefel lived 33 years. Okay? Kama Havi Lahu. So how old was Achatefel at the point that he lived, that he died? Tlas and Utlas. He was 33. Okay? Now, let's do the math. When Achatefel was 33, he died. Achatefel was 33. That's when he died.
33.
Yeah. Okay? Shlomo HaMelech was how old at that point? That same point that Achitofel died was when Avshalom did the Merida B'Malchus, and we said Shlomo HaMelech was 7.
Shlomo was 7, right.
Okay?
But then
Dal Sheva, Dahava Shlomo, take the 7 years that Shlomo HaMelech was alive and subtract it. In other words, we know that from the time Achitofel was born until Shlomo HaMelech was born was 26 years. So Achitofel lived 33 years, right?
26.
Achitofel lived 33 years, right? And Shlomo HaMelech, and then Shlomo HaMelech was born, and Shlomo HaMelech lived for 7 years, and then Achitofel got up to 33. 26 and 7 is 33, and then Achitofel died.
Right.
So we know that Shlomo HaMelech, when he was born, Achitofel was 26. Pashluhu Esrim V'Shis. You have 26 years left. Okay, so now we know that Achitofel was born. He had a baby named Ilam. He had a baby named Bathsheba. She had a baby named Shlomo, all in 26 years. Okay, Dal Tarti Shni L'Tlasi Buri. Take away 2 years that you need at minimum for 3 pregnancies. Rashi says, what's the 3 pregnancies? You're going to take. A minimum pregnancy is 7 months. Plus a month to get pregnant, so that's 8 months for each pregnancy. That's 8 times 3 for 3 pregnancies, for Ilam to be born, for Bathsheba to be born, and for Shlomo to be born. So that's 8 pregnancies times 8 months. 3 pregnancies times 8 months is 24 months is 2 years, right? So then Dal Tartishni L'Tasibur. Take away 2 years for the 3 pregnancies. Ishtakach, it comes out to call Chad V'Chad B'Tamni Oiled. Each one had a baby when they were 8. In other words, if you had 26 years and took 2 years away, you left with 24 years. Divide that evenly because that's the maximum amount you could have a pregnancy with, right? 24 divided by 3 is 8 years. It means each of them had a baby when he was 8. So you see, Deris Harishainim had babies even when they were 8 years old. That's the Gemara's raya. But the Gemara, all the way at the beginning, you knew this wasn't going to be a raya. Why? Because the Gemara said, Ilema, if you're going to say it's from here, right? Now the Gemara is going to say, why that's not a raya. L'chara, it's a good raya. Or it says, no. Mimai, how do you know? How do you know that's a raya? Dilma Tarvayu B'Teisha Olid. Maybe the 2 men, Achitofel and Ilam, they had their babies after they were 9 already. Bathsheba, Elida B'Shis, and Bathsheba was Olid, she had a baby when she was 6 years old, right? So you have 9 and 9 is 18, plus 6 is 24. Bishum de Itzabari, because a lady is healthy. And not only that, it makes sense to say that. The Hahavel of Vlad Meikara, because the pasuk says that she had a kid before Shlomo HaMelech. Means she was even younger than that. So that means, and the Gemara says she had a baby and was nifter, and she talks to David HaMelech about that. But that means that you see that a lady has to be able to have babies even for sure less than 8, right? For sure less than 8. So you see, you have no raya from there because maybe it's only women could have babies less than 8, but men have to be 9. So we don't know for our Gemara a raya that there is Harishainim had babies from 8. So Gemara says, okay, that's not a raya. I'll bring it from over here. Elamei Hacha. Let's say the raya is from the following. Pasuk says, Eila Tildes Terach. Here is the children of Terach. Terach Chilid as Avram, as Nachor, as Haran. Terach had three kids, Avram, Nachor, and Haran. Okay? Now, before we say okay. Now, what does this mean? Avram gadol minachar shana v'nachar gadol miharan shana. It makes sense. So we're saying that Terach had these three kids, pashtus in order, right? It makes sense to say first he had one, then he had the next, then he had the next. That's the closest it could be. Would be a year apart, let's say, right? Nimtza Avram gadol shtei shana miharan. So Avram is 2 years older than Haran. Avram is then 1 year later Nachar, and then 1 year later Haran. So Avram is 2 years older than Haran. Uksev, and the pasuk says, "V'ikach Avram v'Nachar em nashim v'goymer." Pasuk says, Avram and Nachar took women. Shem Eshes Avram Sarai. The name of Avram was Sarai. The Shem Eshes Nachar Milcah. The daughter of Nachar, the wife of Nachar was Milcah. Bas Haran, the daughter of Haran, who was Avi Milcah Avi Yiska, the father of Milcah and the father of Yiska. And the Gemara says, who is Yiska? Rav Yitzchak says, Yiska is Sarah. Yiska is Sarah. Right? So in that pasuk, it calls her Sarah and it also calls her Yiska, and it's talking about the same person. V'lam nikrashma Yiska. Why was she called Yiska? Shesaycha b'ruach hakodesh. She sees with ruach hakodesh. And that's what it says. Hashem said to Avram, listen to everything Sarah said to you. This is the lady's favorite pasuk, right? Oh, perfect. Araisa?
Yeah, so there's a child over here. If Yiska was so important, why do they call Sarah for? They should call it Yiska. Why do they call it Yiska? Why was Sarah called Sarah?
Yeah.
Sarah should be called Yiska.
Yeah. Okay,
but since Yiska has another meaning, they deliver.
So the Gemara is going to say, Davar Achar, another vart. Yiska, what's Yiska mean? Shakol Sachem B'Yayfia.
Yeah, right.
Everyone is looking in her beauty.
Right, that's why they want to call her Yiska.
Right.
That's where they get Sarah.
Right. But Vuksiv in the pasuk says, "Vayipal Avram al panav." Avram fell on his face. Vayitzchak, and he laughed. Vayimer b'libe v'goymer. He said in his heart, "Could halaved meyashani vale? Could a 100-year-old person have a baby?" And Vim Sarah habas tishim shana teiled. Sarah is 90. Could she have a baby? So now what do we see? Kama kashish Avram Sarah eser shnin. How do we know how old was Avram from Sarah? He was 10 years older than Sarah, because he said he was 100 and she was 90, right? Because how much older was he than Sarah's father? Sarah's father was Haran, right? So he was 2 years older than Sarah's father. Ishtakach comes out ki olda Haran the Sarah, when Haran gave birth to Sarah, betamni yolida, he was 8 when she was born, because Avram was 2 years old when Haran was born, right?
Right.
And then we know he was only 10 years old, 10 years older than Sarah. That means Sarah needed to have been born 8 years after Haran. Avram was born for 2 years, then Haran was born, and then there's only 8 more years for Sarah to be born, for Avram to be 10 years older than her.
Right.
So Avram, we see that Haran was only 8 when he gave birth to Sarah. Okay, so that's a good raya, right? How do you know? Dilma Avram Zuta Da'achu Ahava. Maybe Avram was really the younger of the brothers. Why did it say Avram and Nachar and Haran? And the Torah is enumerating them in the strength of their chachma. How big to me the chacham they were, and Avram. Yeah. But Gemara is going to bring another raya over here. In a raya that the Torah sometimes says people in the order of their chachma. The pasuk says, "Vahi Noach ben chamesh me'eh shana." Noach was 500 years. V'yilad Noach Shem Cham v'Yafes. And Noach had 3 kids, Shem, Cham, and Yafes. Now l'chayri you'd say the same chesh by Avram, Nachar, and Haran. Shem gadol micham shana, v'Cham gadol miyafes shana. Shem, then a year later Cham, and then a year later Yafes. So Nimtza, Shem gadol miyafes shtei shanim. Shem was 2 years older than Yafes. L'chsev in the pasuk says, "V'Noach ben sheish me'eh shana Noach was 600 years old. So that means 100 years after he started giving birth. Mabul haymayim al aretz, and the mabul was water on the ground. That's when the mabul started. Uksiva, that the pasuk says later, El the Shem. These are the children of Shem. Shem ben Ashana. Shem was 100 years old. While Yoelid is Arpachshad, and he gave birth to Arpachshad.
No, I think he skipped.
What did I skip? To V'chsiv, the Eila told the Shem. Eila told the Shem.
Cham kam the Yefes, Sham Nusat Hashem, Shem God the
Adim to Shem God mi Yefesh Teisha. Right? Okay, so Ksiv it says pasuk Eila told the Shem Shem ben Ashana. Shem was 100 years old. Vayolad is Arpachshad, and he gave birth to Arpachshad. Shenasayim achar Mabul. 2 years after the Mabul. So, Frek the Gemara, Ben Meya Shana, how could you say he was 100 years old? Bar Meya V'tartin Shnin Hava, he was 102 years old. Why is that? If Shem was the oldest of the brothers, right? That means he was born when Noach was 500, and then Cham was born when Noach was 501, and Yefes was born when he was 502. Right? So now we're saying that Shem was born when Noach was 500. 100 years after Shem was born was the Mabul.
Right.
So in the Mabul Noach was 600 years old, right? And that was Shem was a ripe young age of 100 in those days. Right? Then he had a baby 2 years after the Mabul. Well, if it's 2 years after the Mabul, and at the Mabul he was 100, now he's 102. So how could the pasuk say that he's 100? Must be that you see that when the Torah lists the sons of Noach, he's doing it in the derech of their chachma. Over here also by Avram, Nachar, and Haran, the pasuk listed the three brothers in the derech of their chachma, and therefore now you don't have to say this, but you have no raya anymore, because maybe you could say this, and then you have no raya that Haran was born, that Sarah was born when Haran was 8.
Shem Cham Yafes, Cham was the word, at least. Shem Cham Yafes. Cham was.
Look in Taisvis, the last Taisvis, the little Taisvis. Eldar Chachmasim Kachashiv. Tema Frak Taisvis and Cain Lichshav Cham Blibasayf. Rukra Kachashiv Shem V'Cham V'Yafes. Taisvis asking your kasha. Okay, Taisvis doesn't answer it, so we have to scratch our heads a little and see if we can come up with the answer. But right now Taisvis live sharp. Okay, so Lamaisa, do we have a raya yet for 8 years? We don't have a raya yet for 8 years. Amar Rav Kana said, Amrita l'shmaita kamed Rav Tzvi min Arda. I said this halacha to Rav Tzvi min Arda. We're still going now on the derech chachmas and chachashiv. Amar li, he told me, Ata mehachamas nisu. You're learning this from over here. V'anan mehachamas ninana. We learn it from over there. Pasuk says, "Well, Shem yulad kamhu." Shem also gave birth. Avi kol bnei Aver, the father of all the bnei Aver. Achi Yefes hagadol. He was the brother of Yefes, the greater one. What does this mean? They darish in this pasuk that this means Yefes hagadol sheba achiv hava. Yefes was the oldest one of the brothers. So that's where they learned that it was derech chachmas and chachashiv, because he had a different pasuk that's mashma that Yefes was older. Okay. So L'maisa, we have no raya of where you know that kids could be born. A boy could have a kid at 8. The Gemara says El Manolan. Where do you see it from? The Gemara says here's the raya. Behacha from here in our parshas. Okay. It's Shmois Lamed Ches Chaf Beis. So I think it's next week, right? Or no, it's later. It's later on. It's in Kisisa or something, Vayakel or something like that. But it's coming pretty soon. We're in Parshat of the Mishkan now. Mehacha, it's from over here. V'tzal ben Uri ben Chur lamata Yehuda. V'tzal was Uri's son, and he was Chur's son of the Shevet Yehuda. Uksiv. V'tamas Azuva died. Vayikach loy Kalev es Ephras. V'tel loy es Chur. Azuba died, and she was Kalev's wife. So Kalev took a different wife, Ephras, and they had a kid Chur. The Torah is just trying to explain one generation up from the pasuk before. So now we know it's Betzalel, Ben Uri, Ben Chur, Ben Kalev. Okay? Ben Kalev. The second pasuk is telling us, Vatamas Azuba, who was Kalev's wife, died. Vayikach le Kalev es Ephras. Kalev married Ephras. Vatelad le Yeschor. And Ephras had a baby with him, Chor. So now we know Kalev's was Chor's father. Chor was Uri's father.
Kalev is married to Basia, right?
Probably that was the first wife, I'm guessing. And that's Azuba, I'm guessing, but I don't know why it would call her Azuba. But the point is that Chor was Kalev's son, Uri was Chor's son, Betzalel was Uri's son. Betzalel ben Uri ben Chor ben Kalev. V'chi'aven Betzalel Mishkan, Bar Kama Hava. How old was Betzalel when he made the Mishkan? Pasuk says, Bar Kleisar, he was 13. The Ksiv of the Pasuk says, Ish Mulach Shem Aisim. Pasuk says by the people in the Mishkan that all the Chacham came to do all the Mlech HaKodesh. Ish, each person, each man, Mimlachtai. How old is an Ish? An Ish is 13, right? So we know that Betzalel was at least 13 then, right? Vitanya, we learned the Brisa. Shana Rishayna, the first year of the Midbar, Asa Moshe Mishkan. Moshe made the Mishkan. So that means Betzalel. That was the year Betzalel was 13 in. Shniya, in the second year, Heikim Mishkan v'Shalach Meraglim. He put up the Mishkan and he sent the Meraglim. So if it's the second year and Betzalel was 13 in the first year, well then in the second year he was 14, right? Siv in the pasuk says that Arba'am Shana Anoichi. This is Kalev talking. This is the pasuk in Yeshua. Kalev is the narrator. Kalev is speaking, and he says, "Ben Arba'am Shana Anoichi. I was 40 years old. V'shalach Moshe Eved Hashem v'Gaimer, and Moshe Eved Hashem sent me to be one of the Meraglim."
What's the cheshbon? They got an Einish. Yem Lashana. Yem Lashana. Now, if the Meraglim were a second year, it's not 40 years, it's 39 years.
We're talking about how old he was when he was sent, not how old he is right now.
No, but it says that second year, that was when the Nikab Mishkan showed Meraglim.
Oh, you mean why? You're asking a question like this. Why did they get 40 years in the Midbar? They should have gotten 41 years because they're already a year into it.
Right, no, 39.
They're already 1 year into it, so they shouldn't have had 39. They should have had 40.
No, 39, not 40.
They only had 39.
They had 40 in the Midbar.
There were 40 years in the Midbar, but you're saying that they only had 39 years of Einish.
Right.
So you're asking why they have 39 years of Einish. They should have had 40 years of Einish and be in the Midbar for 41 years total. That's what you're asking me?
No.
That I'm not understanding.
It's over here. Rishana, also Moshe Mishkan.
Right.
Next year, second year, he said that year number 2, the Meraglim went out. Now the Meraglim got an Eish. What? 40 years. And now, why?
In order to stop the wind from touching, right? You have a barrel of wine.
Oh, okay, yeah, no. The 40 years started then. Yeah.
40 years started from the first year.
For the first year, started the second year.
40 years started from when they went out of Mitzrayim.
Yeah, but
the Einish was that they were out there for 40 years and they didn't have, because they did Yom Lashana, that was the Einish, but it wasn't. But the Einish was given in the second year. But still, the Einish was that they should be out there for 40 years.
But the second year is only 39 left.
Right. So it wasn't 40 years from when they got the Einish. It was 40 years total.
So you have a guy that's sitting there in his house.
Okay. So now, so the second year Moshe made the Mishkan. He put up the Mishkan and he sent it to Meraglim. And then the pasuk says in Yeshua, with Kalev speaking, Kalev is saying that Arba'am Shana Anochi v'Shalach Moshe Eved Hashem v'Gaimer. I was 40 when Moshe Rabbeinu sent me out to do the Meraglim, right? Now I'm 58, but I'm sorry, 85. This last pasuk is not relevant to Haraya. Kama haviluhu arba'in. So how old was he when he went out of on the second year of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, he was 40. How old was his great grandson Chor? His great grandson Chor, we said that year was 14, right? It means 14 years before, when they were still in Mitzrayim. Not Chor, I mean Betzalel. Betzalel, he was 14. That means he was born 14 years before when they were still in Mitzrayim, right? So Dalar Beisar take 14 years of Dava Betzalel, that Betzalel was alive, and take that off of Kalev, go back 14 years in history, and that means that Betzalel was born Pashaluhu Eser Meshis. Betzalel was born when Kalev was 26 years old. Dal Tartishni the Tlasi Iburi. Take away 2 years that could have 3 pregnancies in, just like we said before. So you're going to be left with 24 years. That teaches us that each one had a baby after they were 8. So that means Kalev was 8 and he had Chor. Chor was 8 and he had Uri. And Uri was 8 and he had Betzalel. And the teretz we said before that maybe one of them had it earlier, that's not a teretz because we said before one of them was a lady. Bathsheba was a lady, and ladies are healthier than men. But over here, they were all men. So they had to, it doesn't make sense that one was more than the other. And therefore, you see from here that in Deris Shainim, they would have kids when they were 8. Right? And then the Machlokes Beisham and Beisel is, do we carry that over to our generations or no? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, bit of a complicated cheshbon, but we made it through, Baruch Hashem. Okay, now the Mishnah continued and said that one of the things we learn out of Chiyil Ish Ben Seira Omeira is Ben V'lei Bas, that a boy and not a girl. Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Rab Shimon says, B'dinhu shetehei bas ru'ya liyizke Ben Seira Omeira. The halacha, al pi logic, it should be that you could have a Bas Seira Omeira just like a Ben Seira Omeira. Why? That's the Avera. Everyone's going to be by her by Avera. In other words, what is the story about the Ben Seira Omeira? He's going to eat meat, he's going to drink wine, he's going to want more money, he's not going to have, he's going to go steal, and it's going to cause a major kalkala. Over here, she's going to eat meat and drink wine and want more and not have enough money, and she'll go and become a Zaina, and people will pay her to do Averas with her. So it's the same logic. Why don't we say that there's such a thing as a Bas Seira Omeira? Ela Xeris HaKasav Hi Ben V'lei Bas, but it's Xeris HaKasav Ben V'lei Bas. Period. Okay. Now, I have a thought over here. I'll share it because we'll see if it's true as we go through the next couple of blocks. That the cheshbon, and we see this. We're going to see this in pretty much in the next Mishnah, but we see it over here also. The cheshbon Ben Seira Omeira is that it'll be meishach after it. He'll be sort of addicted to it. I'm thinking of it in terms of addiction. That the person Ben Seira Omeira is going to be so about taiva for this meat and this wine, is going to do whatever he needs to do to get more of it, even if it causes him to go and harm other people. That's described the Mishnah. The Torah is describing an addict. So I'm thinking.
No, he starts off not stealing it.
What was that?
So he starts off as a drinker. When he starts off with somewhere, he's only eating and drinking.
Right, but it's what? Why can't he stop eating and drinking and say, look, I had a good meat and I had a good piece of drink of wine when I was 13. Now I'm 14, I'm a little more mature, I'm going to stop doing it. Or I just don't have enough money, I won't do it. Why does he go? Right, the answer is that he's Pasha doesn't have the chilas to do tshuva over here. He's going to do it. That's why I'm thinking it's damage to an addiction. And let's go through the Gemara and we'll see if this is what it is. Zak the Mishnah weiter. The aim is a chayiv. From when is a Ben Seira Omeira chayiv? When he eats a tartimar, the Gemara is going to explain what a tartimar is. A tartimar of meat. And he drinks a half a lug of Italki wine. This is very chashiv. Maybe it's Italian, I'm not sure. It's a very fine wine. He's going to want to drink more, and he's going to be lahat after it. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, Rabbi Yossi says no more. Mone basar, a mone of basar, lug yain, and a lug of wine, not a half a lug of wine. Al b'chaburas mitzvah. Achal b'chaburas mitzvah. Let's say he ate this meat and drank this wine. B'chabura of people are doing a mitzvah. Right. Do this mitzvah.
It's by a wedding, yeah.
Huh? Yeah. Achal b'ibra chaydesh. He ate it by ibra chaydesh. When they used to make ibra chaydesh, make an extra derish chaydesh, they would make a suda. Achal ma'aseh b'Yerushalayim. Or let's say he ate ma'aseh b'Yerushalayim. And understandably, we're talking all these cases. Remember, he has to steal the meat and the wine, right? So he's stealing the meat and wine from his father and drinking it and eating it and drinking it by the sudas mitzvah, or as my stealing the ma'aseh sheni and eating in Yerushalayim. Achal nevelos u'treifas shkatzim or masim. Or he ate nevelos treifas shkatzim and armasim, and that was his meat, right? Shkatzim is meat, nevelos is meat, right. So it wasn't kosher meat. Or achal darashu, a mitzvah of darashu avera. He ate something which is a mitzvah, or he ate something which is not avera.
Which is what?
The Rashi doesn't say. I imagine we're going to see it in the Gemara. Or he ate everything. He stole from his parents, stole from his father, and he ate all sorts of stuff. But he took an apple pie, and he ate that, and drank wine. But he didn't eat meat. Or shasa kol mashke, he took beer, he took whiskey, he took orange juice. He didn't drink wine. He doesn't become ben sera. Until he eats meat and drinks wine. And Shenemar, like Pasuk says, Zaylo v'Sayvei. That's what Zaylo v'Sayvei means. Va'afal pi she'en rayin l'davar. Even though we don't know for sure that this is what the Torah says when it says Zaylo v'Sayvei. In other words, Chacham had a Kabbalah. This is what it was. But even though you don't have a raya from a pasuk that Zaylo and Sayvei means yayin and basar or basar yayin. This is Zechel Davar. Shneimar, the pasuk says that, and Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, Al ti v'Sayvei yayin v'Zaylo basar lami. Don't be by those people who are Sayvei yayin and Zaylo basar. So you see, the language of Sayvei is on wine and Zaylo is on meat. Yeah. Okay, Zak Gemara. Amar Rav Zera. Rav Zera says, Tartimar zu. Tartimar is that. This Tartimar, any day I don't know what it is. But
we don't know is it
Mishnah says
it's size worth or the actual thing. What it is?
The actual
is the actual thing or the actual weight?
It's a weight, but we don't know how much weight it is.
The weight.
Yeah. But we hear say, I don't know how much weight it is. Right? I don't know how much it is.
Okay,
Ella mitosh kafler abis.
Tadima is a weight. The tadima is an object.
I believe it's a weight.
Okay.
I believe it's a weight. Any day now, I don't know what it is. The Tanakhama said, how much wine is it? Chatzi lug. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's not a chatzi lug, it's a lug of wine. And it's not a tartimar of meat, it's a mana of meat. So because we see he doubles by wine, it makes sense to say that he's doubling what the Tanakhama said by basar. Then since he said a mana, tartimar chatzi mana, so it makes sense that a tartimar is half a mana. So Tanakhama says half a mana of meat and half a lug of wine. Rabbi Yossi says a mana of meat and a lug of wine. Yeah. Amar Rav Chanan bar Mulda, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Chanan bar Mulda said the name Rav Huna. Einei chayiv at shikach basar b'zel v'yechel yain b'zel v'yishta. He won't be chayiv the ben sera meira until he buys with the money he stole. He buys cheap meat and drinks and cheap wine, and he drinks it. The ksiv, like the pasuk says, Zaylo v'Sayvei. Zaylo is lashon of zal, of cheap, of less expensive. What does that mean? Rashi says it's not a smachta, it's not a real drasha. But because Rashi says that if you're how you call it, a feinschmecker, right? If you're a thief with refined tastes, you're not going to be able to find your targets to have enough money to be able to support your habit, right? So you're not going to do it, because you're not going to be able to steal enough for that. So therefore, we're not chayshish in such a case. If you bought expensive meat and expensive wine, we're not chayshish that he'll be able to keep up his habit, so to speak, and therefore he is not going to be considered a ben sera meira to be chayiv, because he's not going to be mamshech. He's not going to be safe from last minute sprees. Rav Chanan bar Mulda or Rav Huna. Rav Chanan bar Mulda named Rav Huna says another thing. You're not chayiv until the Gemara's Nahavamina says raw meat and you drink raw wine. In other words, wine is undiluted wine. Right? In those days, they would dilute wine before they drank it because it was too strong to drink straight. Correct the Mar, it's not so. Rabbi Rav Yosef Damar Tarvayu. Rabbi Rav Yosef both said, Achul basar chai v'shasi yayin chai. If you eat raw meat and you drink raw wine, Eini nasa ben seira meira. You don't become ben seira meira. Ravina says, no, I'll tell you what's going on. Yayin chai means mazik v'loy mazik. It's partially diluted, but not fully diluted. Basar chai, raw meat, doesn't mean real raw meat, it means bashal v'loy bashal. It's cooked but not cooked. It's not fully cooked. It's like the roasted meat, that ganav meat. Because ganavim are always in a rush. They don't want to stay in one place for too long because they don't want to get found and caught. So they eat and drink not fully diluted wine and not fully cooked meat. And what's the lumdus over here? The lumdus is the same thing. That because he's because if it's good, if it's strong wine and strong, I guess, hearty meat, then he's gonna get addicted. He's gonna get drawn after it. But if it's regular wine, what do you call run-of-the-mill wine? It's just the matuk kal from the fridge. He's not gonna be nimshach after it. They have to worry that it'll be ben seira meira and seif last misabrius. Rabbi Rav Yosef Damri Tavayu, Rabbi Rav Yosef both said, Achol basar maliach v'shas yayin v'gitay, eini nasa ben seira meira. Somebody who ate salted meat and salted means preserved meat, and v'shas yayin v'gitay, and he took
wine directly from the barrel,
right from the barrel, from the wine press. So right after it's pressed, fresh, before it fermented, right? So in those cases, he doesn't become. It's not chashav. The salted meat is not like beef jerky. Is not chashav, and what do you call it? And yain migita is not chashav, and he doesn't become ben seira meira. Now, Zak the Gemara, quoting a Mishnah. Tan Hasam, we learned in a Mishnah in Tainus, Erev Tisha B'Av, on Erev Tisha B'Av, L'yeichel Adam Shnei Tavshilin, and the Sudas of Sekes, the person shouldn't eat two cooked foods. L'yeichel Basar, he shouldn't eat meat. L'yishta Yayin, he shouldn't drink wine. Vitana, we learned in Brisa, L'yeichel Basar Meliach, V'shes Yayin Migitai. Basar maliach, salted meat, that's not the chashva meat. And yain migitai, that's fresh, straight from the wine press, that's like grape juice. Those two things he's allowed to eat on the Sudsam of Sekas. And what's considered basar maliach? Basar maliach ad kama. How long is it that the salt, the meat is sitting in the salt, that it becomes considered basar maliach, that you're allowed to eat it in Erev Tisha B'Av? Rav Chanina bar Kana says, "Kozman shuk shlam." It's like a shlam. A shlamim waits 2 days and 1 night that you could eat it. So if it wasn't 2 days and 1 night, it's still considered not totally salted, and still you can't eat it at the Suda and Erev Tisha B'Av. It makes you happy, and wine makes you happy. But if it's still that fresh, but once it's past 36 hours, 2 days and a night between in time, and it's sitting in the salt all that time, that's considered basar maliach, and you could eat it. The taste, Rashi says, the taste switches between the salt and the meat, right? Like the meat taste goes in the salt, and the salt taste goes in the meat. It doesn't taste as good. V'yayin migita ad kama, and yayin migita in Erev Tisha B'Av, how much could he drink it? How long can he drink it and still be considered? And can still be considered not yayin. That, in other words, how long since it was pressed and considered not yayin that he could drink in Erev Tisha B'Av? Kozman shu taisis, as long as it's bubbling when it's strong, it was in the process of fermenting, and it's still, Rashi says that you still feel it. It bites your throat. It sounds like Rashi is explaining seltzer, right? That it's still taisis in it bites his throat, right? So and how long is kozman shu taisis? Vatanya learned in a brisa, yayin taisis imber b'shem giloi, yayin that's taisis. There's no problem leaving it uncovered overnight. V'kama tisisasa, and how long is that for? 3 days. So if the wine is less than 3 days after it was pressed in the wine press, you can still drink it in your Sudsam of Sekas Erev Tisha B'Av. So halchamai, what's the halacha over here by ben seira meira? do you say that over here also, if the wine is up to 3 days old from when it's pressed, or the meat is up to 2 days in the night between before it's salted, that would be considered basar maliach and yayin taises. That basar that's not maliach, yayin that's not taises. Basar maliach would be before 2 days and a night passed, and yayin that would not be yayin tesis would be after 3 days. That would start when it's fermenting for 3 days already. That's considered wine, and ben seira omeira would be chayiv on it. That's the Gemara Shaila. Maybe. Gemara says no. It's very different. Hasam shem simchahu. Over there by Erev Tisha B'Av, the problem is you can't eat meat and drink wine because of simcha. Kozman shukishlamim and Nami is Simcha. As long as it wasn't salted, as long as the time of Achila Shlamim, you still have Simcha. But of Hacham Shemim Shuchihu, V'choshu, like here's what are you going to get addicted on? If you're drinking, even Rashi says Koshu doesn't mean a little bit, it means overnight. Even if it's salted overnight, it's already not the good piece, gazunta piece of steak that you like eating, and you're not going to be mimshach after it. So even overnight salted, you're already not going to become ben seira maran. And the wine has to be 40 days after it was pressed, so it gets a chance to ferment to become good. Because if it's lousy wine, you're not going to be mimshach after it either. Yayin taisis, after 3 days, you can't eat it because maybe because you simcha, but you're not nimshach after it. It's not a $55 bottle of Bordeaux, right? Okay.
That's cheap today. Yeah.
That's cheap today. That's true. Okay, now because we're talking about wine, and it's very appropriate now because we're almost by Purim, the Gemara is going to say a bunch of Gemaras about wine. Okay, we're not going to get very far, I think, because it's almost time for Ma'ariv, but we'll start. Amar Rav Chana says, "Niver yayin ba'olam. Yayin wasn't created in the world. L'nachem avelim to be menachem, to console mourners. L'shalom schar l'rasham, and give schar to rasham who are in this world, that they get their schar here and they shouldn't get their schar in Elam Haba. Shenever, like the pasuk says, to
by give them wine.
You give them wine in this world, that means they'll feel good about it, right? Wine is good, and then he'll get the schar in this world, and he won't need any schar in Elam Haba. He'll get all the Gehenna. Like the pasuk says, "Tenu shecher la'avid," give old wine or beer, but old wine pashtus to somebody who is a lost. That's a rasha who is lost. V'yayin l'mari nefesh, and wine to someone who is an aval who has a bitter soul. Amr Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak says, what's pshat in the pasuk? Al teira yayin kiyas adam. Don't look at wine because kiyas adam will become red. What does it mean? Al teira yayin. Don't look at the wine. Shemad impneim shel rasham ba'olam hazeh. It makes a rasha's face red, ruddy. He gets flushed from wine in this world. It makes their face white in Elam Haba because they got their schar in Elam hazeh. So you shouldn't drink too much wine. Rav says, Al teira yayin kiyas adam. Same thing. Al teira yayin. Don't see too much in the wine. Shachris adam. It's going to cause blood at the end. It's going to cause bad things. And let's stop here.
Okay.
And on this note of temperance.